Good day. Could I start then, Professor Krishnan, with your permission?
I think Gopal will start here. Yeah.
No, I think we'll just start. They want to wait for a minute for people to come in, KVK.
Yeah.
That's what she said. I'm just giving them like a minute to.
There is a lag for people to log in, so they give about a minute or so. So you can see the numbers going up there.
What are the numbers like, Krishna? I can't see it on the iPad.
Already 25. It went from 0 to 25.
Okay, yeah, I can see 22. Now it's 22. Okay.
Oh, I see. Including us, it's I see. Okay.
So, Krishna, you can just give us a signal, and then I'll make the intro and we'll make start.
Usually, when there is a pause in the numbers changing, we can just start there. After that, people keep continuing actually.
Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. You tell us. Let us know, Krishna.
I think let's start now. Stopping in the number. Yeah.
We are live. Yeah, there is a message.
All right.
Okay. Anviti, shall we start?
Yes, let's start. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who has joined us at this conference today. That inaugural ceremony could not have been more appropriate in driving the vision of the Mission in India conference. In line with this, we would like to invite Mr. Gopal Srinivasan and Professor Krishnan for a fireside chat with our very esteemed guest, Mr. K.V. Kamath. Mr. Gopal is the chairman of TVS Capital Funds Limited. Now in its Fund 3, it manages $300 million of growth capital and is also unique as its entire pool of capital is purely domestic. He's also an active angel investor, closely involved with public policy. He's a former two-term chairman of the Indian Private Equity and Venture Capital Association and a member of SEBI's Alternate Investment Policy Advisory Committee. Finally, he's also associated with the CII's National Committee for Private Equity and Venture Capital. With him, we have Professor M.S. Krishnan. Professor Krishnan is not only the faculty director of the Business and Tech Initiative, but also of the C.K. Prahlad Initiative and India Initiative. Professor Krishnan is also the Accenture Professor of Computer Information Systems and Professor of Technology and Operations at the Ross School of Business. He has co-authored the book, The New Age of Innovation, Driving Co-Created Value with Global Networks with Professor C.K. Prahlad in 2008. With that, I hand that over to you, sirs. Looking forward to this very interesting fireside chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Anviti, and let me also add my good morning and good evening to everybody in the audience. It's a pleasure to be back at Ross, even though it's virtual. Today, I have a very unique privilege, and I would say a very great pleasure in inviting to be with us in the Fireside conference, a very eminent person in the form of Mr. K.V. Kamath. Many people know him from many different angles, and there are many different angles of his to know. I know him as a dreamer, and also a doer. I know him as an institution builder, but also a people builder. I think he was also born with the ability to see the future. Today, when we see what is happening in the Indian banking industry, Mr. Kamath, I cannot but imagine in 2002, when you created the demerged infrastructure of ICICI, the bank at the top and the companies at the bottom. And in 2022, I'm seeing it happen with HDFC. You saw this 20 years ago. And that's how he could always see the future. He built India's first retail bank. He built this amazing financial services organization. He was the first with a digital bank and a great evangelist of being a digital bank. And such, he has many, many firsts, including diversity in terms of gender diversity in ICICI, which is legendary. And he again saw that 20 years before all of us did. He's also a global CEO, one of the many great global CEOs India has produced, having been the chairman of the BRICS Bank, or the New Bank of Development as it is known. And currently he's, of course, the chairman of NABFID, India's premier infrastructure development bank organization, and also an awardee of the Padma Bhushan. But most importantly, friends, he is a friend of Michigan, and even more importantly, a great friend of CK. He introduced CK to corporate India way back in the 90s, in the form of something called the Bangalore Club, which many of us had the opportunity to be participating. When the world said India had to liberalize, and India was forced to under difficult circumstances, many Indians said, we're not ready, and we should not allow this opening of the economy to take place. But Kamath, with CK, pioneered this idea of opening up India by making ourselves more competitive, more ready, and actually global inside to face the challenges from global outside. And that was known as the Bangalore Club. The memories of those club, Kamath, are still fresh in my mind. Your inspiration to bring CK to corporate India and strengthen corporate India, and today see where we are, and even more, see where we will be when India becomes 100. So I welcome you to speak on India at 100. If CK was called now, what would he say about India at 100 is what we would love to hear from you. And of course, as we know, his message, fold in the future, was always ringing in my mind. So we'd love to hear you talk about folding in the future. And Krishna and I will not only enjoy your comments, but try to add some questions to fuel the fire. Over to you, KVK.
Thank you. Good morning. Morning. Thank you, Gopal. I think I start by remembering CK. I certainly remember the Bangalore Club. The Bangalore Club, in a way, was in place when I became CEO of ICICI in 1996. Maybe I had a small role in getting some of the younger leaders like you into it, encouraging you to come in. But I want to start with that club. It's good that you cued it in and take another point, maybe 2008, 2009, post-Lehman, and then take a leap to today and what is happening and how would the next 25 years look like. And that could provide probably the foundation for today's chat. I think 1996 was a time of horror for corporate India because they had the rug pulled out from under them. Everything had been opened up. They were basically running what I would call pilot plant scaled plants. They were not really scaled plants at all. And imagine having to face global competition. There is CK challenging you to say, I want you to be global leaders. I want you to think beyond. I want you to fold the future in, as he would say. And lo and behold, we all thought it is impossible. We all thought these are targets which is impossible to set. But people did fold in the future. And we saw post 2000 to 2003, a whole host of Indian companies going out and actually acquiring global companies, setting up global and so on. So in a way, the future was set during those very hard days of 96, 99. My own case, the sort of drive that you can do it in a global context gave us 3 cues. And I'll put that in context because the same thing will play out again now. One was go out and raise money. We did not have the ability to raise money from the domestic markets. So we went to the London market, raised a GDR, went to the US market and listed on the New York Stock Exchange and raised more money. That's the first thing. Second is, how do you fold the future in? The future for us was retail. We were a project finance company. So again, going by what in a way he had taught us, 2, 3, 4 sessions, we had the courage to say that we will try to build a retail bank out of what is really a project finance company. And we did that with a good measure. And of course, technology played in at that point of time. We could not afford costly technology. We could not afford mainframes. So we said we will play with whatever was available. And of course, Moore's law was alive and kicking. So we rode along that. So all lessons from what I would call the C.K. Prahlad textbook in terms of nothing is impossible. You can grow, whatever are your challenges, try to serve your market. And in India, there's always the bottom of the pyramid, which is your market, and you can grow that. So these were the lessons of 1996, which in a way, I use the storytelling of ICICI to indicate that it is doable. It was doable. What he taught was doable. What the path he showed you was achievable. Cut to 2008, 2009, you have a post-Lehman crisis. India Inc. is in a funk. Basically, everybody is saying, we do not know where we would head. Again, CK says, this is the time to think of the future. Let us think of the next 25 years. And what is it that you are going to do? Don't think of now. You will overcome this challenge. But let's map out the future. And indeed, I was, I think, the president of the Confederation of Indian Industry at that time. So we worked with CK to put out in a charter, as it were, for India at 25. And it was a very interesting charter. And we have a young team still working on that charter and trying to see where we are on that map. Of course, CK would have told us if we were there that it needs course correction. Because in 2009, probably one thing was still not very visible. The first signs of it was visible, but was not fully visible. I'm sure he knew it, but we could not have probably seen it. And that was the disruption that the digital economy would wreak on conventional business place, as it were. So the march of technology and the advent of technology probably we did not see. He would have seen it, because he had a very interesting saying even those days. That was, you produce 1 billion of anything and you will get it for a few cents each. So you can imagine what he's trying to say, that you build scale and the cost drop dramatically. So given that, that's exactly what's happening today. When I look at what's happening in the tech world, the disruptions that are taking place, basically you are building 1 billion of something and the cost drops dramatically. And sure, that would have been the mantra. So when we had a chat, Professor Krishna and Gopal, other colleagues from the school, we said, let us look at what is it CK would have thought of as the path forward. We can take stock of where we are. I think we have made good progress on the charter that he had set for us. But what is it that he would have charted as the path forward? And that, I think, to me, is the most exciting thing, because we have again turned a leaf in terms of what is happening in the global space. I'm talking of just business. I'm not talking of current developments in Europe. I think that throws up a completely different opportunity set, a different challenge set also. And he would have had wonderful thoughts on this. But just the technology set, again, I am sure it would be wonderful to chat with Gopal and Professor Krishnan as to what this throws up. Some pointers to me is basically, I use a phrase, technology is today free. And if you know how to go about getting it, technology is free. So he'd have said, take it for the common good. And take it for the common good. Is it so difficult? Let us look at the India stack. India stack is a phrase that you may or may not like, but let's look at the components of that mix, as it were. First, you have a bank account for everybody. I remember in 2008, 2009, I used to say that the biggest opportunity in India is to bank the unbanked. What was the number of unbanked people? 600 million people are unbanked out of a population of 1.3 billion or so at that point in time. And you talk of 2014, the span of 6 months, 400 million accounts were opened, just 6 months. You see the advent of technology that took place and what was possible. That was the first stack. That to me is a stack which is scalable and we could take it across the globe. Then came Aadhaar. Again, the same skepticism. Is this workable? Will it actually work? Is it scalable? Workable, scalable. Then comes the UPI stack. The UPI stack, again, to me, is something that nobody dreamt of even 4 years back. 4 years back got rolled out, but COVID, to me, it became the mainstay of our economy. Without that, India as an economy would not have prospered. We would have faced enormous challenges in actually doing the simple act of paying for something that we want, getting our money out of the bank and making it reach whoever needed to get it. It would have been impossible. So Jan Dhan at one end, Aadhaar and the eKYC structure, and then comes the UPI model. So to me, a robust, scalable model, I think, would have been the underpinnings of the future. And along that, we would have built something new. And what is that? Maybe that's what we will talk in detail, is the new digital economy. And my belief is Gopal has much better numbers on this as to the number of startups that have happened in the last 3 or 4 years, and the number of startups that will happen on an annual basis going forward, given, I would say the last one year's run rate. And what it does to two things, which is, again, very dear to CK. That is, what would it do to the bottom of the pyramid in terms of employment, opportunities, putting money into their hands and so on. To me, it is a dramatic change. And some elements of these we are seeing as we go along. I think a lot more will happen as we go into the future. I'm going to stop here and just say that the new charter CK would have had us look at for the next 25 years would be built along not only the foundation that has been built from the first charter, it would have set new I would say pointers and flagposts for us, and it would have taken us along the changes that we are seeing in the technology space, the workspace, and the global context. I'll stop here, Professor. I'll stop here, Gopal, and take it as you say.
Thank you, Mr. Kamath, for that opening. It is indeed very nostalgic, interacting with you, because I still remember in in 2007 that call from your office, and I was kind of very excited. Mr. Kamath wants to speak to you, and you were asking me about that there is a document in which CK has kind of documented the speech at CII, and you wanted that access because it had so much of message in that. That was the India at 75 vision of CK. As we know, in that vision, Mr. Kamath, CK, he highlighted very important points. A couple of them I'll start with, where he talked about the skill development as an important piece, right? Because in order to engage, especially the middle and the bottom of the Indian economy, the people, 600 million people, he emphasized the importance of almost kind of building the scale, as you talked about, 500 million people being kind of upskilled or develop some kind of skill which could be monetized in a global market. Okay, and he emphasized that. And the second point I want to take is he talked about the innovation that is required in education sector, right? And you talked about bringing the unbanked into the banking, kind of inclusive banking. But he also included that we need to bring them up in terms of changing the education to be more engaging and innovative, right? And moving away from rote learning and skill development. So as we have seen in the last 15 years, I was kind of more curious in terms of how much we've come on that skill development, given the digitization and the transformation that is happening. Because I was looking at some of the reports, apparently this year's budget, 2022 budget, I mean, there is so much of focus on developing skill ecosystems, right? And with the national, the NSDC, National Skill Development Council. So I was wondering, where are we on this? And second, given the India stack and kind of models of digitization, where can this go? I mean, how can digitization can be a catalyst to CK's vision as we look at the next 25 years?
Yeah, I think very good point, Professor. I think let me talk on the skill development larger context as the foundational skill to do things and make things. I think that is going on at a pace. And again, there is Indian companies have a way to resolve a challenge that they have. So let us say they do not have enough skilled carpenters or masons or whatever. Before they set up a plant, they will open up a shop and they train these people in. They will work for the next 1 year on this, the project that is on hand, and then they're available to the marketplace as it is. But under CSR, a whole lot of companies also have gone to put this into a modern context and scale it up. So at that end of where 10, 15 years back, we used to say, where are the people who can build? I think that problem is now solved in whichever area you look. I don't share that as a recurring problem. It has now moved to the digital skills that we are talking about. And maybe the classroom teaching in schools using digital media. And then I will go on to the digital at the corporate end. The classroom, and probably it took us a little while because I would say the curriculum had to be built up and the delivery mechanism had to be developed at an affordable cost. Today, we use the phrase everything is demonetized in a way, so and democratized in a way, because you have costs crashing dramatically in terms of data in India. So everybody that has got a phone which is data capable. And schools, again, have got the wire going in or the Wi-Fi going in. And basically are able to, and more importantly, they've got the curriculum going in. So all pieces have fallen in place. The hardware has become cheap. The connectivity cost has become cheap. And curriculum has developed in a form that can be imparted to. What is required there probably from a distance, I'm not first-hand on this, is what you said, changing the rote learning. So that's a question we need to ask. Has the curriculum and the content now been changed to today? Probably that is work in process, but what content was there, the extent it has changed, is now delivered online. To me, is going up the learning curve. We have gone pretty far up the learning curve. We now have to plug in new systems. At the higher levels and where people are to be self-taught today, it's a global, so you can access any site which has knowledge and you can download it. And I think Indian kids are smart enough to do that. Then comes at the corporate end. My belief is that almost all teaching will now, in terms of what you need to do at the corporate end, be digital. If you go back to Infosys, up to just a few years back, we had to have a campus, 10,000 people going into the Mysore campus to be trained for every turn. And every turn used to be around 4 months. So you have 3 turns in a year, 30,000 people, young minds going in to be taught the skill. I think COVID would have put an end to that, and all these would have been one, and so would all other tech companies. So if you are looking at, what is it, a few million people are going into this business, they're all skilled online. I think the same has happened in the banking sector. We had started long back, and I'm sure it has gotten pace. We had codified all our learning, given it to NIIT to impart it either online or in classroom. I'm sure all of that has become online. So I think a lot of changes have happened on the ability to learn online. And the probable gap that I see is the content, which might have to be updated, particularly for the school end. I think at other places, it is probably developed pretty well.
Thank you. Thanks.
KVK, I still remember as it was yesterday when you were chairman of CII and you requested me and another colleague to chair and co-chair the India at 75 committee, and we came up with the first report and we released it during your annual day, and that seems like yesterday. Let me take a question closer to something you have been doing a lot of, and what CK would always say, credit is a fundamental right. You've talked about India Stack, you talked about the digital drives in India, you talked about the Jan Dhan bank accounts, but yet when I look at the credit availability in India, in the SME sector, particularly small kirana stores, small businesses, and of course, even for the underbanked, or should we say underserved economy, the bottom 2 or 3 quintiles of the economy, we still feel India numbers are way behind. CK always said credit is a fundamental right, as if like everything else. What is your vision, India at 100? How will credit function to the last bottom 2 quintiles of the economy, which we call the BOP?
Gopal, point well taken, and credit has to flow to the bottom of the pyramid. But let's take it in context. Up to 2009, retail probably as a constituent of, and this is retail credit. Ultimately, the bottom of the pyramid is a retail borrower. Was probably 15 to 20% of a bank's book, and today it is crossing 50 to 60% of the systemic credit that the banks are providing. So it is pervading downwards. I think 2 things need to happen. That is, the borrower needs to be able to afford credit, in the sense that he should take in as much credit as he can service. And that will happen only when economic progress happens. So the thing goes hand in hand, and the cycle moves in sync. But if you look at today, the general trend, the ability to afford things is going deeper and deeper down into the pyramid, as it were, as against what we saw just a few years back. And that is consequent to the growth in per capita incomes. So this will now go entirely in sync with how fast we go from a 3 trillion economy to a 5 trillion economy, and a 5 trillion economy to a 10 trillion economy. At that point in time, we will get it fully in. And I would think that at that point in time, 65 to 70% of bank credit will be to the retail borrower. And that will include everyone, including people at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, is nothing happening at the bottom of the pyramid? That's not correct either. If you see the number of self-help groups and the good work being done by a whole host of banks at that end of the thing, it was an unorganized sector earlier. Now, some of them have become banks, very successful banks at that. So I think there's a new ecosystem of, I would say, lending institutions which have learned how to lend, how to make sure the money comes back and keep a healthy ecosystem going. So I would think that this will gather pace at a rapid rate as we go along.
Great.
Understood.
Yeah.
Krishnan?
Thanks, Mr. Kamath. I would like to pick from there, as we are talking about bottom of the pyramid, and as Gopal rightly mentioned in the inauguration, that CK's heart used to beat for those people in the 300 million right in the bottom of the pyramid. Now, given the digitization, and the trends that you talked about, Mr. Kamath, one of the other themes in CK's vision of India at 75 was, if you recall, he talked about the demand for building 300 to 400 or 500 cities because he wanted to develop this modern city because he was looking at the rural-urban migration. He said that's something that we cannot avoid, and we have to accommodate. And now, given the context of digitization that we have seen, and also, of course, in the last 2 years with the COVID and ability to kind of have host events like this, how do you think this digitization, as even CK used to say, is democratizing the access to both opportunities and capabilities, right? How do you see this kind of evolving in terms of opportunities for people at the bottom of the pyramid, and also in the rural, geographically in the rural areas? Do you think that the migration, as we projected, will happen in the same way, or would the opportunities would actually kind of search out and expand out into the rural areas as well?
Again, I think CK was prescient in the sense 300 cities. What we meant, in the way I understood it, is that what we have would grow to become cities, and people would be in those cities rather than come to the 4 or 5 metros that you look at. I think there were 2 preconditions there, which he might not have articulated very clearly, but to me it was visible. One is you need to make sure that these cities and the hinterland are connected physically and digitally. When he talked about in 2009, the physical connection was already happening because it started in 2001, 2002 with the Prime Minister's what was called the Rural Network Program, that is Road Network Program, the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. And that was building at a pace. But the digital rollout and the affordability part, the democratization of technology, as what I was saying a little earlier, had very early beginnings. So that is in full bloom. Imagine today, I sat at home just now and asked what are my household help? Well, your month's salary, your overtime, where do you want me to remit? He's got 4 different bank accounts in 2 different rural towns in Jharkhand. And he said so much goes into this account in a small village and something else in a small village. I could do it in the next 1 minute, send him my WhatsApp with a screenshot that this has been already remitted. Now, imagine this connectivity and what it does to the rural the ability for this person to have his money where he wants and virtually in the blink of an eye provides you economic power, which we are still not understanding or still to figure out what is the power of that economic might that you now have, or access to economic benefits that you have. Gopal asked for credit. Now let us say that that person there has borrowed something, maybe his family member, a child or a wife or whoever is there, wants to has borrowed something, has to make a payment. That payment also goes online and is virtually settled in the span of a few minutes, real time. Now, to me, this is where then comes, why do I need to go out at all if I have got these this convenience here? Now I need to look at where is the economic part. The rest of it is in a way addressed, and that is where I would think the rural job equation comes in. And again, we used to think of agriculture jobs, then we said agri-value added jobs. But why do we stop at that? Why don't we think beyond and say, what are the new digital jobs coming up there? I'll take a minute to tell all the friends on the line. If you go and watch YouTube and you try to look up Indian bloggers who are creating a 10-minute blog daily, and you try to look at who are the ones having the largest daily views, there is going to be a surprise. These are going to be people blogging from villages who create content, post it daily, and well, you know what the returns are. And then it goes into the ecosystem of the village. The guy builds a home, the guy puts good things into the home, the guy employs people. So you have an ecosystem going. More importantly, you are raising the aspiration of somebody next to you to also strive and do something which you know. Yeah, we have to thank maybe the algorithms of YouTube for pushing this, and probably good that you have raised the aspirations of rural India. Tomorrow you will have many more such people, and we're not talking of stray 1 or 2 people. We're not talking of tens of thousands of people creating a variety of content, which is very exciting to see if you have the time. So I am in a way, this is my hobby. At night before I go to sleep, I spend maybe 15 seconds on each blog to see what is this guy uploaded and how has his growth been. Dramatic. In the last 2 years, there are people who have grown from no subscribers at all to 1 crore subscribers, 10 million subscribers, daily views of 7 or 8 million. You can just imagine what that earns you and what it does to the ecosystem, because the Indian rate is slightly cheaper than the US rate. They're paid $500 per million views. So you have 8 million views. Well, it's a decent amount, I think.
Wow.
$4,000 a day for somebody who's just probably not done high school and blogs every day, 365 days. Arithmetic is very simple. What does this do to rural economy? So I just took one example. We can stitch in a lot of examples as we go along. I came from a 1 week stay in Coorg, in Karnataka. You don't see rural poverty. Not to say that there aren't other parts of India, but I'm saying the process of getting all of these to behave in a manner that they are self-sufficient, I think is on way. And this is going to gain momentum as the economy goes from 3 trillion to 5 trillion. And the digital economy, drives things at a pace. I will just interject a point here. I think CK would have said, you guys now need to look at what is going to be the contribution of the digital economy to overall Indian economy in the next 5 to 20 years. Right? You would have said 25 years, but even if I were to take it at next 5 years, I would think that it will go from a virtually single digit, mid-single digit, maybe 4 or 5, to I would think between 25 and 30%. If you are going to go at 8% and you add a pie of 25% on that, you are into double digits. So, and you can imagine what that does to getting to the bottom of the pyramid and lifting them up.
Thank you. Thanks.
In fact, I think your enthusiasm for the cooking channel, 120 million viewers for their top subs, one of the top videos. Actually, I learned from you that nearly $1 billion was paid to YouTube video creators, and all that is going into the economy in India, as you said, and transforming it. I have a slightly different question closer to what you're doing. India has become the hub of startups. The Prime Minister does not start any speech without saying we're the world's 3rd largest startup economy. 10 to $20 billion go into startups each year, out of the 60 billion which goes into venture capital, private equity. Venture capital, private equity inflows actually constitute close to 2/3 of total FDI coming to India. CK talked about innovation, and this is the form the innovation has come. What is your vision for digital India? We talk about 5 to 6 million developers, but yet we have a long way to go in a country where scale is the mantra of the country, as you pointed out, Kamath. We have scale of thinking, we have scale of history, we have scale of population, and therefore, I'm just curious, is there a dimension of digital power of India, whether it's the digital public infrastructure that we have like Aadhaar or UPI? How can India affect the world digitally in the next 25 years? And including, for example, we missed the AI ML wave, but we might be better off in the Web3 wave because it seems like we made more progress there, even though there are some controversial elements on the crypto side. I'm just curious about how India's digital power will be at the helm of its foray into the world in 25 years.
Gopal, we'll have to look at it with the lens, maybe a slightly different lens. When you talk of the next wave, we have now only had a 2-year head start. I think all the India stack or whatever is around it was tested and proven in the last 2 years. I think that gives confidence to whoever is not necessarily putting these into the global platform, but similar things to the global platform, enormous confidence. A. B. Somebody outside customer outside or ecosystem outside which wants to use this, I think also now can look at and believe that this will work. Something that is developed in India will work. So that confidence is also going to come up. So I would think that the next wave of migration of India developed products, whatever type of products in the technological area, would be scalable very easily or much more easily than we thought possible. We did not do anything earlier. We were content to be software engineers, software doctors to the world. I think we are now creating, the ecosystem in this area, and we probably are telling ourselves, "Hey, lo and behold, I think this works." And we could probably be good at it. I was just the other day benchmarking HR platforms. You do a Google search, the top 10 HR platforms, you'll find one of them is in Indian. And it is a small company, and it's probably not one of them. It is probably very near the top, if not the top. So I think these are all, I think, products and processes which are scalable. And disruption is happening at a pace. What I think the Indian creators have to think of, Gopal, is that for sure they have created value and they should be very proud of it. And for a moment, they should take a pause and say, value is created, what is the valuation? Is that valuation justified at this point in time, or do I need to do more? I think a lot of them are content to say that value is created because the product is excellent, so on and so forth. So the valuation that I'm seeing also, the PE guys, the way they have ramped it up, that also is correct. Now, that is where the disconnect lies, because then you stop being hungry. You have to be hungry to take it to a market where you really create the valuation. You have not created the valuation till you have a cash flow, which does not necessitate that you look at who is going to provide the cash when you burn out the cash. So we have this challenge with almost, I would say, majority of the startups in India who could have been the people who would have carried this to the global marketplace. So they have to be a little more hungrier and correct
Beautiful.
or quote themselves from a false sense of satisfaction. They have created so much value in India. Now they are a world beater sitting in India. They will have to go out, and they can go out, and they will succeed. But I think they will learn the lesson very quickly, because the first few issues that have hit the market, I think, are going to be eye openers to a lot of people who are waiting in the line.
Absolutely. India is a product nation. Today it's about 3 billion, that's what I'm told, and it can go to 20 billion really fast. So that may be the one where the value creation catches up with the valuation. Beautiful. Krishnan?
Yeah, Mr. Kamath, I just have a little follow-up on Gopal's question, and then I'll take another topic. So you mentioned that the technology skills, the IT industry, of course, India has been, as you said, is software doctor or software engineers. It's been a great growth. I mean, from 2 billion 20 years back to, I just read the latest reports, more than $134 billion in terms of IT and IT services. And you have also been, you kind of have been at the top of leadership in Infosys, one of the top companies. We certainly rode that wave very nicely, right? But as Gopal mentioned, somehow, maybe I don't have the full picture sitting here in US, the AI/ML, India did not come up prominently as, catching that wave. Now, the Web3, right? Generally what is called Web3, because of the crypto, do you think there's also a policy implication for the government to encourage, to separate out the crypto from Web3, skills and capabilities, because the application of that is beyond crypto, right? And then do you think, is there an incentive that is required, or is there, or the market will take care of itself?
Yeah, I think I'll answer it in two ways. The Indian creators, whoever is active in the marketplace, and we are seeing the startups succeeding. And as I said, they have almost all of them have created value. There is hardly anybody who has not created value. I have a disconnect with the valuation, but I'll keep that aside. So that itself is indicating there is a new momentum, which has gathered pace over the last 3 years and dramatic pace over the last 2 years, which creates products which will embed AI and ML and use it to good effect. And I'm sure today, almost all these new cores are utilizing the AI and ML into the things that whatever they are building, because that's how they are scoring over the incumbents. So that is so they are now a user of AI and ML rather than the originator of it. So that, I think, will happen at a pace. And as far as the government is concerned, in terms of the policy framework, I don't think there's any policy bar on technology innovation. The problem, and I think rightly so, is on using a currency or value for an asset which is indeterminate as in the minds of the government. And nobody is able to actually articulate what is the true value. And could you allow and could you expose in the context of India the large population to this. So that I would keep aside. But underlying technologies, I think sure we would, I'm sure the country would welcome this. See, there's another interesting point here, Professor Krishnan. See, we talked of this number, the export number.
Yeah.
The export number has to be looked in a proper nuance. I think the way I look at it is very simple. Let's say that it is 150 billion, round numbers.
Yeah.
1/3 of it is probably onshore in India, 2/3 is offshore.
Sure.
2/3 offshore, I think the world is getting this, work done at probably half of what they ought to pay. You're talking of that as probably the value is not 100, it's 200. The balance 50, you are probably getting it at 1/5 of what you ought to pay. So you're talking of 250. So you got 250 plus 200, right? Almost half a trillion in terms of numbers, which somehow get passed as 140 billion. The true value created is significantly more, and it's only growing. And the world is benefiting from us. I'm sure we will understand how to play this card as we go along, because this is the true value that the country has to be recognized for, acknowledged for, and recognized for in whatever way. And that is actually the economic power that India has got for the rest of the system. And this is all part of this process of growth that has happened. But AI and ML, I would think that we probably will become users of the developments there into the various things that we are rolling out ourselves.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Kamath. The other question, the other topic that I wanted to touch was, as we know, CK's passion and love for India, and he always saw India both as a market for products and as a market for talent and resources. And India, CK had the vision of, Indian multinationals, right? I mean, that he used to talk about that. But interestingly, we also have, that same theme in a different way. As the students had done research for this conference, that more than $5 trillion of market cap, globally is now run by, business leaders of Indian origin. How do you see this development kind of shaping in terms of what India can be in the context of not just its own economy, but also contributing to the global economy?
That's a very interesting point there. Firstly, I will say that this is something that CK would have celebrated, because in the year 75, he had set a goal for the number of Nobel Prize winners who should be from India in 25 years. I'm sure he would have changed the goalpost to say somewhere mid-course that we should now look at the number of Indian CEOs who are heading global companies. And as you said, yes, I saw that list. 20 Indian CEOs account for almost 1/3 of Nasdaq market cap of Nasdaq. So it's just 20 CEOs, or actually shade less than 20, who account for that number. And that number is growing by the day as I think the leadership is accepted. Now, you go back, how did this happen? It has not happened by accident. It is a consequence of steps taken going back to the 60s. The technology institutions that were set up, the management institutions that were set up, their ability to then go out and serve marketplace globally, the growing Indian marketplace in the last few years, the open marketplace, liberalized marketplace. So it is, I think, coming together of all these things which have produced these leaders. And in some cases, I say it is not that these leaders went from India, it is a second generation. The parents went there, and that the children now are leading, were educated, born and educated in the US, for example, who are leading these companies. But you go back to the root. The root is what was done going back in a long time. So clearly, new markers will have to be set for India at 100 in terms of what is the impact that Indian human skills and talent would do to the economic, global economic picture, as it were. And I think that would be something that if we can pen it down or paint it, CK would smile at us.
Thank you. I didn't know that time really moved so fast. We only have 1 minute. Gopal, you have a concluding question, or?
I do. As we're talking about India as a major player in the world stage, we talked about digital, we talked about talent. I have one last question to you, Kamath. In this time of unrest in the world, when CK gave his final speech for the Nani Palkiwala lecture in 2010, he basically spoke about how India, were it to put the rule of law were it to stand by morality and justice as its two pillars, could not only have peace and happiness and harmony in the country, but India could be a torchbearer to the world on how to run a peaceful society where there is so much of diversity and differences, and yet peace, happiness, and harmony prevail. Any thoughts that what we can take away from CK in these difficult times, how India can be the torchbearer of Dharma to the world?
Yeah, I think that is something fundamental. What he spoke is something fundamental. And clearly, if you look at our picture and compare it to several parts of the world, I think there's nothing that we should be shy of. And I'm sure as prosperity spreads, prosperity increases, and income goes down, and people the bottom of the pyramid thrive. That lays also a different layer of growth, of satisfaction in the context of the two pillars that you articulated. So we are on the way to it. We, I think, have traversed it pretty well, and I'm sure we will do even better as we go along.
Great. Thank
Super.
you.
I think, Krishnan, whether you want to go first and thank Kamath, not only for the enthusiasm and energy with which he shared those ideas, but just the power of those insights. I never tire of speaking to him regularly, whether it's learning about something small like the Village Channel or something very, very powerful about the difference between valuation and value, and whether valuation is removing hunger from startups. I mean, that is such a fantastic thought. You'll be using it all the time, but thank you so much, KPK. I mean, having you here was a beautiful experience, because it also brought back the emotional connect from 1996 to this 26 years in which you started as CEO and went on to do so many other great things, but with CK at the center of the ideas. So thank you very much, KVK, for sharing your enthusiasm and your ideas and your thoughts with us. Krishnan?
Yeah, very well summarized, Gopal. Can't agree with you more on this. And we are indeed honored to have you, sir, for your time for the conference. And thank you very much on behalf of our broader Michigan community.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.